Hey guys, Kenny Castor here. Today we're going to be talking about Esper Stoneblade. It's a deck that I'm going to play. Just wanted to go over it a little bit with you guys. Here, we'll start off. This is our removal package. I added another Vindicate. Most of the lists that you are online and floating around usually just have one Vindicate, but I did want an extra one because I did add another card to the deck that most isn't very typical of your Esper Stoneblade deck, but I'll talk about that a little later. Moving right along, here's our more of just blue cards, which is our value package, as I like to call it. We do have Snapcaster, Jason Mind Sculptor, Brainstorm, basically just make your deck accessible to you. So, you know, when you do have one-ofs, such as like Engineered Explosives, or like I said, a lot of people do have the Vindicate, then it lets your deck flow a lot smoother. Talking about this one counter spell, I wanted a card. If you notice, I don't have like Force of Will or Spell Pierce as many other decks do. I did want a card that once you have the game locked up, then you can just shut it down and don't even have to worry about anything else. And that's what Counterspell does a lot of the time. It also is just a very tempo-ish card where you can just simply out-tempo your opponent. Moving right along, we do have the discard package. Since I did cut down on the counter spells, I did want to add another discard spell. So there are 3 Thoughtseize, 3 Inquisition, basically just to try and rip your opponent's hand apart and make the deck create the game to where you want it to go. Then we're going to the Stoneforge package. We got our 2 equipments. We have another equipment on the sideboard, but the basic equipment's main deck are just the Batterskull and the Jit. Jit goes really well along with Lingering Souls. Lingering Souls is more just like a grindy card. It's good against the aggro decks to buy you time, or it's against the control decks. Like I said, you can always suit them up with the equipment and just grind them out that way. Another card that really is in many of the Esper Stoneblade's deck lists that I have added here are the Deathrite Shamans. That's when I was going back to the second Vindicate, so if you happen to be on the play, you can just Vindicate their land if it's not like a fetch land. The lands that are in this deck, we do have 1 of each basic. I do have a couple utility lands, the Caracas and the Academy Ruins. Academy Ruins mainly to reoccur the explosives, or if one of your equipments gets discarded from your hand, then you can always put it back on top and then put it back into play with Stoneforge Mystic. There are 10 fetch lands, just because you want a lot of lands for the Deathrite Shaman to be active. It also works very well with Brainstorm and Jace. And then we have our dual lands. Basically, I cut down on the Tundras just because I want to have access to black on turn 1, and if I don't, I want to sack a fetch land. So I wanted more black sources, so I did add more scrub lands than usual, and there are a full set of Underground Seas. I also added a Tropical Island just in case you need to fetch out and gain some life with the Deathrite Shaman. So that's the main deck, and now let's talk about the sideboard. Moving right along to the sideboard, we do have quite the combination of cards here. I do want to start out with our counterspell package. Like I said, there's only one counterspell main deck. So when you do play against those combo decks, you do want something to just keep you alive until you're able to stabilize or rip their hand apart, or basically just not die. And that's what the 4 Forces and the Spell Pierce are for. I also might swap out the Jit for the Sword of Feast and Famine against those decks, just because it interacts more. Jit can pump your guy, but like over the course of time, I think a card being discarded from their hand is going to be a lot more valuable than just dealing some extra damage here and there. Supreme Verdict, more just a catch-all card. If you do play against a creature deck, that and the Zealous Persecution are good. Zealous Persecution is pretty good in the mirror as well. It gets Lingering Souls, it gets Snapcasters, which are not really what you want to be doing, but it does get it. Also kills Dark Confident. Some of the Esper decks were playing Dark Confident, so it can kill that. Geist of St. Traft is really just a clock. If it's good against the control decks, it's even good against the combo decks, I think, just because it's it kind of sounds weird saying like Jit isn't good against them because it's too slow, but Geist of St. Traft is kind of the same thing as Jit, except not only is it hexproof, but it's also a blue card, so you can always discard it to the Force of Wills whenever you bring those in as well. Surgical Extraction I have just because I like it against combo decks as well. If you do have a lot of discard, you do have counter spells. So if you can get something in the graveyard like a show and tell or a sneak attack, then you can just like rip their deck apart. Or even if they intuition for like 3 Emrakuls, then you can get them all. So that's good as well. The Disenchant's more of just a catch-all card. If there's something, maybe Sulfuric Vortex, you can bring it in against like Rug deck. You can bring it in the Mirror Match. It gets all the equipment from Stoneforge Mystic. It's really just, if you play against Affinity, you know, just basically just anything that you might need to blow up. And that's my take on Esper Stoneblade. Hopefully we can get a few games and see how this baby does.